was contemplating something about 6 different things. I'm a man of, I'm not gonna brag or whatever, but I like to have deep thoughts. I like to make things extremely complicated for the fun of it, because I'm probably retarded or something. So I like to make things too complicated for what it's worth. But anyways, sometimes these weird, complicated thoughts can lead to something good in the end. But whatever. I was thinking about 6 different things, I think, or 5. It was routines, structures, discipline, motivation, and clarity. And yes, I was contemplating how I'm supposed to live life to the fullest extent. And life is complex, you need to do that from time to time. But I wanted to break them down so it would be easier to approach. So I had my structures, I had my schedules, I had my calendar. How can I go about fixing that? Can I optimize it in some way? I have my routines, I eat healthy and exercise and whatever it may be. Take care of myself. Do I have clarity? I don't know. I have certain goals in my life that I want to achieve. The more I was thinking about these, the more I got a headache. The bigger my headache got, because I already had a headache from already having weird deep thoughts about everything in existence. And the main reason I want to break them down is because I want to be more happier, more fulfilled. I was coming constantly into this roadblock of, okay, first clarity, I need to do this, I need to do that, and it's an endless loop of complexity that never ends. It's almost that you feel disdain for yourself, because you never achieve anything when you try to break down into these never-ending loops. It's paradoxical in some way, because you need to do that in order for you to live life to the fullest extent. You need to do a life review. Are you on track on your goals? You need to do that every single year, probably every single day. But constantly I was hitting this roadblock, this wall of complexity. And then I had this epiphany. There's a good ending to this. Habits. Oh, of course, yeah. Yeah, well, obviously, habits. No shit. Right? It's so fucking obvious. Well, we all know habits. We need habits to exist, to live this life to its fullest extent, to achieve some sort of fulfillment. We all need it. We all know it. But have we ever thought deeply about habits? Have you done that recently? Hmm? Well, that's what I love about these obvious things. They're so obvious that we don't recognize its complexity and what it can actually give us. We tend to gloss over them because it's obvious, so of course we should just gloss over them. But no. Don't throw the baby with the bathwater. Every single movement, action you take is a habit. Every ounce of thought that you have in your mind is a habit. Every action you take. Why is that? Why is that? Why is every single thing a habit? Because we tend to recognize habits as something that you do on a daily basis. But it doesn't necessarily need to be daily. It could be a pattern that spring up from seemingly out of nowhere, but it's a pattern, so In its purest essence, it's a habit. Why? It's because of what's inside here, your brain, obviously. You can start there. What do we know about the brain? Well, inside the skull, it's quite dark. There's no light entering this brain, except through the eyes. And even then, light does not enter into the brain, just signals. Close your eyes. I mean, really close them. Really close them. Experience pure darkness. That is how it looks like in your brain. It's pure darkness in there. Because your brain does not necessarily interpret what you see in the same way you see them. It's so weird because your personality, whoever you are, is in the brain. But when we really think about it, your brain does not interpret this brush as a brush. I see this brush and it comes into my brain as a signal. That's that. Okay, what can we do with this information besides it being a funny fact? We love funny facts, but we don't want to do anything practical with it. I tell you this, it's quite... I can give you a practical solution to this, or some practical relationship with the darkness inside your brain. When we recognize that everything in your brain is in pure pitch black darkness, and everything that comes into the brain is a signal, and that means your brain is a reactionary organ, like your gut or your digestive system. It's a reactionary organ. When you put food in your mouth and you swallow it, you don't need to think about digesting your food. You don't need to think about, having your muscles in your intestines pull through your food and then out your asshole. You don't need to think about that. But then you say, wait a minute. My brain, I'm thinking. Yeah. You're thinking. You are. But still, it's the same process. You see something, a signal, you see food, dopamine receptor spike. Your glands inside your tongue and your mouth, they react as well. It's all an automatic process. Okay? Now you see. Now you see everything in existence that enters your brain is just becomes a reaction. Everything you see becomes a reaction in your brain, becomes a signal. Okay? Does that automatically entail that everything I do is a habit? Yes. And I already explained it to you. Because all your brain is doing is reacting. Then it needs a system, because it cannot be constantly reacting to everything. That's why memory is important, right? Picture this. You lived 500,000 fucking years ago. You were a little monkey with your ugly ass tail behind your asshole. And climbing trees. You need to know where food is. You're reacting to everything. How are you supposed to drive yourself through anything? You need food, you need to eat, so you need to drive yourself to eat. You see this little mango tree up in the forest. You see this mango tree, right? You pick the mango, you eat it. It's sweet, right? It's pure sweetness. Good. Fills your stomach full of fibers and vitamins and makes you alert. And of course, you go back to your little tribe of monkeys, and then you get hungry again. Are you just gonna forget about the mango? No. Hungry, signal, brain, react. Eat. That's reaction. Eat. Do that over and over and over. This little monkey will do this over and over again until the day it dies. Go to that mango tree every day. And that becomes a habit. Because everything you do entails your survival, essentially. Movement. You need to move a certain amount of distance every single day to be alive. You need to move to the toilet, to pee. You cannot just, well, you could pee yourself. And you don't want to do that because it's unhygienic. You see, whatever we may approach, we can deconstruct it into a habit. I don't want to go far too deep into this. I don't want to give too many examples, but I will tell you this. Whatever action, whatever behavior you may observe, it's a habit, even though it is not repeated every single day. It's a pattern. You need to follow patterns to survive. So of course, those little monkeys that lived 500,000 years ago, that followed the patterns, they were the ones who survived. Those monkeys that didn't like patterns, they died off because they couldn't remember where the mango tree was. They couldn't remember where the predators usually lurked. And they died. Like you're doing inside. when you're addicted to shit, addicted to drugs and nicotine and whatever. Okay. That's the essence of it. Everything you do is a habit. Your brain lives in darkness, so it needs habits to survive. Okay. Now, the interesting part comes in. What can we do to bring this information into a practical form? Let's say you have a smoking addiction, cigarettes or drugs, I don't know, whatever floats your boat. You need to recognize that it is an addiction, of course. We'll get to that in another video. You need to recognize this behavior as a habit. We already established that everything is a habit. Okay, good. End of discussion. Now, what brings about this habit? First time you smoked that cigarette, you felt good. It created a little pattern in your brain. Your dopamine receptors thus became programmed for smoking cigarettes. Now we can go a little bit deeper into this and see about instigators of habits. What's an instigator? You may ask. Something that triggers it. A trigger. Perhaps a better word. It's a trigger. A trigger for the habit. It can be quite hard to observe. You will probably fail. But when you can recognize and become aware, when this idea enters your mind, you suddenly become more aware of your triggers. Obviously, of course. But they can be subtle. Now, I read a very interesting book called The Molecule of More. And a very fascinating thing I read in that book was about a doctor, or I think a psychiatrist, who was helping his patient become clean from a heroin addiction. This patient, read about it, it's so fascinating. This patient, whenever this patient would enter a store, a very particular store, not every market, where you buy food. This was a food market, normal superstore. It was a very particular superstore. Whenever that person would enter that superstore, a couple of minutes would go by, and they would get a trigger. They would get that heroin trigger. They will get that trigger to take that drug and inject it. That's so weird. What does a supermarket store have in common with injecting needles into your arm? It makes no sense, right? It makes absolutely no sense. So weird. So the psychiatrist went with his patient, and instead of just rushing into the store, he would take one step, small little steps, small little steps, small little steps. You know what happened? They observed, the psychiatrist observed, when he came to the detergent aisle, that's when he got his trigger. So we asked him, does this have any relationship to your addiction? And all of a sudden it came to him. He used detergents to clean his needles before injecting them. Now that's subtle. That's so subconscious. That would make you kind of give up on becoming clean. So of course, if you have a troublesome addiction, you probably need to seek help. I implore you, seek therapy. I love therapy. I've gone to therapy myself. I love it. It brings so much, clarity among a lot of things. And I do not judge anyone that goes to therapy. I congratulate them, because therapy is even though you may not even feeling depressed or sad or anxious. I've gone through therapy even though I was feeling great about myself, but I was lost on some things and I've needed clarity. So I went to a therapist or psychologist and gave me a lot of nuances into my life and whatever. And that's the first thing. The triggers can be really, 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 really subtle. So you need to become observant, extremely observant. Another trick may perhaps, I don't know what it's called, but it's mindful smoking. I read a little study that when smokers were mindful of their smoking, they got disgusted by the taste, by the smell. Funny thing is, I actually tried that with my ex a couple of years ago. She was smoking and I told her about this. You should be mindful of your smoking. And I told her that. Observe everything you do. She put it in her mouth, she smoked. I said, feel the taste. Smell it. I think like 5 seconds later she threw that cigarette on the ground. Obviously she didn't quit. But she told me she kind of felt disgusted by the cigarette and actually worked. So you need to be mindful whenever you're doing said addiction. It can be quite hard to bring about this awareness and mindfulness of every addiction that you have. Whenever the addiction triggers you, or whenever you're in a situation and you're actually in the process of doing this addiction. So instigators and triggers can be really subtle, but when you learn to recognize them, you can pull back, and you will have a greater chance of stopping with it. The third thing is your habits is very much related to your social life. If you constantly hang out with shitheads, you're gonna have shithead habits. So your habits need to be kind of assisted in some ways by other people. Of course you can do about this alone. This is more optional. It will make it easier for you if you have a training partner to go to gym and start a training habit, whatever it may be. But that's optional. But I think that could be a very good complement to your life. And lastly, the third thing is just recognizing that everything is a habit. You realize that you need to replace the said habit with something suitable. You already probably know that, But the thing is, you cannot just replace it with anything. I mean, you stop smoking, you start doing meth instead. That's kind of counter counterproductive, I guess. Or you start drinking, I don't know, soda. That's also kind of counterproductive because you could do that. It would probably work because the same receptors that get activated by nicotine. Of course, nicotine activates dopamine receptors and nicotinic receptors in your brain, but sugar is a quite high dopamine spike into your brain. It's very similar to cocaine in that way. So you need to replace it with something suitable. If you are addicted to, I don't know, other people's approval, that's more of a serotonergic thing. Correct me if I'm wrong, but serotonin is very much related to dominance. Probably heard about Jordan Peterson and his little lobsters. And the thing about lobsters, they have the same serotonergic system that we do. Quite similar. Antidepressants work on lobsters. Quite fascinating, isn't it? So it's quite social. Serotonin is a very social thing because if you that could be such a vague thing to think about if you're actually think about it. Because if you're addicted to people's approval, you need to perhaps. How do you? Okay, let's think about it. How would you remove that? How would you remove that? I think, in my honest opinion, you need to get approval. You need to get addicted to approval from the right people. If you're addicted to approval, you're probably addicted to compliments, whatever it may be. You're probably addicted to the process of, approval from people that you think are beneath you or whatever, who compliment you constantly. And so you need to get approval from the right people, and also you need to work on your self-image. You need to do a lot of self-reflection. You need to get addicted to habitual journaling. Anyways, I gave you 3. One was optional. Instigators, triggers from habits, subtle in some cases. Bring about your awareness, and all of a sudden, the magic happens. Number 2, it's optional. Start habits with other people. And number 3, replace your habits with suitable habits. Your destructive habits with suitable habits, of course. When you've done that, it kind of settles into itself. But don't go over the top. Something that I've learned through reading and experimenting with habits is micro habits. Micro habits. You need to make it easy for yourself. Okay, you wanna hit the gym 1 hour every single day? You have never trained in like 10 years? Come on, really. You ain't gonna do that. You ain't gonna fulfill your promise. But perhaps 5 minutes every single day for 2 days. That's achievable. And also, we are wired for negativity. And that's one of the main problems of humans. We're wired for negativity. So when we don't achieve our goals, that becomes stressful. When we do achieve our goals, well, not much happens in the brain. It's the process of achieving the goals. But we get little dopamine spikes when we achieve a goal. So perhaps we should construct our lives so that more goals can be achieved. Like, bro, what is easier? Creating a, I don't know, reading one book per day to educate yourself on a new topic, or becoming a postgraduate doctorate in advanced micro molecular biology. You know, obviously reading the book. But you see the point I'm trying to make here. Achievable goals, when achieved, makes you get great about yourself, and then you want to achieve more goals. You achieve more goals and achieve more goals until finally you can tackle the hard stuff in your life. That has worked for me, at least. It should probably work for you too. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Subscribe, like if you liked, and if you disliked it, please comment on why I was wrong, so I may learn from you. But if you enjoyed this video, hit the bell notification as well, so that my videos can be notified to your little inbox. And as always, stay safe and be blessed. Have a nice day or evening.